May we present ourselves to God as ones approved by him, workers who have no need to be ashamed, rightly explaining the word of truth. Amen. If you've attended any of our services over the last week, whether in person in one of our churches or virtually online, it won't have escaped your attention that we have marked the week just gone as Generosity Week. This is now the second year we've done this, to remind us both of God's unbelievable generosity to us and of the need for us to be equally generous in return. Not just our fellow human beings, but in how we treat the universe which God has created and a little piece of which he has entrusted to our care. Last year we chose to do this in the spring, as we emerged from the chill of winter and also from lockdown, as the sun was shining and the trees and plants were coming into bloom. This year, we've chosen to align Generosity Week with the season of harvest, when we celebrate and give thanks for all God's generosity to us. The interesting thing is that in 2021, we chose the Gospel for the Sunday special. This year, we're using the reading set within the lectionary. Only it's the same passage. Luke 17, 11 to 19. Jesus and the 10 lepers. One of those instances when God seems to have a plan for us that we never anticipated. So I hope you'll forgive me if some of what follows sounds just a little familiar. Actually, I'd be delighted if anyone remembered. So, as we come to the end of the week, the theme changes subtly from generosity to gratitude. Gratitude, thanksgiving, however you like to think of it, is a natural response to generosity, or at least it should be. I wonder if it always is. Last week, I spoke in my sermon in Longcott about the time Norma and I lived for a few years in America. We made many deep, lasting friendships there, and were sure each year of an invitation from one particular family to share their Thanksgiving meal. They provided the turkey and the sweet potatoes, yams they called them, served with marshmallows on top, which were something I could probably have lived without. Our contribution was the Brussels sprouts, usually stir-fried with bacon and walnuts, and about which the Americans may well have felt the same as I did about the yams, I don't know. They ate them. Thanksgiving as a family gathering was as important for them as Christmas, probably more so. Its origins go back to the founding fathers. Unfamiliar with the New World agriculture, those early settlers would probably have starved without the generosity of the Native Americans, who taught them to grow maize and the yams and to hunt the wild turkey. So they prepared a meal to celebrate their survival and to thank their newfound neighbours. And we try to recapture that same sense of generosity and fellowship with people of different backgrounds across the world today, just as we enjoy the cakes made by our newfound Ukrainian friends. So, to our gospel reading today. The story we know as the 10 lepers. It's a story we know well. We teach it to our school children as the man who came back. How often do we really stop and think about it? Life would have been hard for those men. They would have been considered by their society as unclean, ostracized to the margins of civilization, where their disease could not be communicated to those fortunate enough to have avoided it. And we've learned all about that recently, haven't we? But leprosy didn't arise from contact or uncleanness. It's a chronic, progressive bacterial infection. It primarily affects the nerves of the extremities, the skin, the lining of the nose, the upper respiratory tract. The disfigurement which it produces, the skin ulcers and lesions, are not a direct result of the bacterium, but of the numbness caused by the nerve damage and of the muscle weakness. Quite simply, sufferers are more likely to injure themselves as they go about their lives and cannot feel the pain which would warn them that they have done so. Leprosy is one of the oldest diseases recorded in history. The first reference to it in the Bible goes back to Naaman, 600 years before Jesus' time, as we read in our Old Testament lesson today. I think we often forget that the stories in the Gospels are not all parables. The Good Samaritan, the prodigal son, stories invented by Jesus to make teaching points which stayed with his hearers, working a way to change their ways of thinking. But many of them originated in real events. The widow who dropped her 2 copper coins into the temple collecting box. The widow emerging from the town of Nain to bury her only son. And of course, the 10 lepers. These people were not characters invented to illustrate a teaching point. They were real people with real feelings, people just like you and me. So try to imagine yourself, if you will, as one of the 10 lepers. What are you feeling? What are you thinking of as we go through the story? I think the first emotion must have been unlooked for hope as you recognise the figure at the centre of the small group approaching down the road. Hope for the possibility of an end to the pain and the despair which has overtaken your life. You've learned through hard lessons to keep your distance, but you shout out, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." You were probably hoping against hope for some instant miracle, an immediate healing of the disease, the numbness and the disfigurement gone. Go and show yourselves to the priests was probably not the response you were looking for. But you go, perhaps with less hope than before, but still you go. You dare not do otherwise. You will pass through waters and walk through the fire if there is the possibility of a priest on the other side. And as you go, do you notice the change first in the way you feel? The sensation coming back to your hands and feet, the strength to your muscles? Or do you notice it first in the faces of your companions, the returning colour, the lesions healing? I don't know, but the realisation must overwhelm you. They have been made clean, and so have you. And what do you do then? Don't think about it. Weigh the options, conduct the risk analysis. What's the first thing that comes into your mind? Because if you think it through, you will end up doing what 9 out of the 10 did that day. You'll keep walking. You'll walk 500 miles and then, as the Pretenders sang, you'll roll 500 more and more, until you find a priest to show yourself to. You'd walk to the end of the earth to be sure of doing exactly what the man from Galilee told you to do, lest the miracle unravelled and the dreadful disease returned. But one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice, and prostrated himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. He didn't stop to think. He responded intuitively, did what his heart told him. His gratitude was an instinctive reaction to the generosity of Christ, as it should always be. And if you're wondering about the other 9, well, Luke doesn't tell us. But I'm fairly sure they found their priest and received his rather puzzled blessing, and that they stayed healed too. But they didn't live the rest of their lives with Jesus' words ringing in their ears. Get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well. Now I hope and pray that you will never have to experience anything like the devastating effects of leprosy. But I do nevertheless hope and pray that you may sometime experience the overwhelming joy of thanksgiving that drove the Samaritan man back to Jesus' feet. We're taught as children to say please and thank you. We're sat down the day after our birthday party and told to write our thank you letters before we get to play with our presents. At least we were in my day. Maybe today you send a text message. But despite, maybe because of that, I think many of us actually find it quite hard to express gratitude. Certainly in the uninhibited way of the man who'd been cured of leprosy. Perhaps to escape a feeling of not being worthy of whatever act of generosity has been bestowed on us. When he meets the lepers, Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. He is on his way to offer the greatest act of generosity ever offered. Nailed to a wooden cross outside the city walls. And if, like me, you struggle adequately to express your gratitude for that ultimate act of love and generosity, I think Isaac Watts perhaps showed us the way in the final verse of his timeless hymn, When I Survey the Wondrous Cross. Were the whole realm of nature mine, that were an offering far too small. Love so amazing, so divine, demands my soul, my life, my all.